Welcome to Beyond the Glass Slipper. Beyond the Glass Slipper is more than a podcast. It is intended to reach women over the age of 55 who are looking to redefine aging, reframe what's possible, and step and embrace this next chapter. This next chapter I call your Encore. So let's start from the top. I have a question for you. When was the last time you talked about how you really feel? The state of your mental health? How did that go? Did you talk honestly about it, or did you provide a diplomatic non-answer? This is a topic many shy away from and don't like to talk about. This is why Pillar 3 is mental health and cognitive wellness. Welcome to Beyond the Glass Slipper. I am your host, Cindy, and today we are stepping into Pillar 3, the one that ties everything together and honestly, the one that women in our generation are usually least prepared to talk about openly. Mental health and cognitive function. I know for some of you, just hearing those words together produces a little internal flinch, a feeling of avoidance, a voice in the back of your head that says, some days I feel better than others, but I'm okay. It's time to check in and hear what the research has to say. But before we go any further, this episode is not about diagnosing anything. It's not a checklist of warnings. It's not doom and gloom wrapped in research citations. This is a conversation about your brain, the most extraordinary organ you have, and what it needs from you right now in this chapter of life I call your Encore, to keep doing the remarkable things it does. And I promise you, there is genuinely exciting news ahead. But first, I want to share my intention for today's episode. Today's intention is simple, and it comes straight from the heart. Mental health and cognitive function are not optional extras. They are essential to your quality of life as you age. If something in today's episode resonates with you and you feel the slight need for support, please ask for it. Consult a healthcare professional. Reach out. The only thing that can truly hurt you is staying silent. Think of today as a PSA for your most important organ, your brain. Mental awareness has come a long way since we were younger, but for women over 55, there is still a gap between how many of us are struggling and how many of us are actually getting support. More than 1 in 5 women in our group are dealing with depression, anxiety, or both, at rates that are significantly higher than men of the same age. And yet, nearly 2/3 of women never receive the care that they need. Why? Partially because we were raised to push through, to handle it, to make or not make a fuss, actually. And, that whole stiff upper lip thing that we grew up with. Well, symptoms are often missed entirely. When anxiety shows up as fatigue or depression looks like hormonal shifts, or worry gets written off as that's just what happens. You start to worry more when you get older. We all hear that. My daughter tells me all the time. It becomes easier for those things to fall through the cracks, even in the presence of a physician. Here is what concerns me most about that. Untreated mental health challenges do not just affect how we feel day to day. This is where the relationship between mental health and cognitive function is noted and important. The research shows that mental illness can accelerate cognitive decline over time, which means getting support is not just about feeling better, it is about protecting your brain for the long haul. Aging is often described as a progression towards slowing down, right? We have less energy, we are taking on fewer roles, we're fading relevance. And yes, this is a stage of life that brings changes, brings real changes. We have the hormonal shifts, the evolving identities, retirement, children leaving the nest, friendships that look different from the way they once did. But here is what is left out of this conversation. Many women in this chapter of life that I call the Encore discover that something else is emerging alongside those changes. And these are actually very positive changes that we can't overlook, or we shouldn't overlook. We start to get more clarity. We start to have emotional wisdom. I mean, think about it. And we start to get a different perspective on things. And it is mental health and cognitive wellness that make these things happen. A very dear friend of mine, Dr. Erin Walker, a clinical psychologist in a private practice in New York City, well respected by her clients. She would say this all the time. We've all heard the saying that when you have your health, when you have your physical health, everything is great, right? What she would always say is, if you have your mental health, you are good. So let that land. We have been conditioned to treat mental health as secondary, as the softer concern, as a thing we get to after the blood work, the cardiologist appointment, the mammogram. But Dr. Walker and the research are telling us something different. Mental health is not a supporting character in the story of healthy aging. It should be the lead role. It really should be. And as a speech-language pathologist working with adults with neurological impairment, I had a front row seat to watching what Dr. Walker's belief, or how Dr. Walker's belief played out in real life. Nearly every patient I worked with experienced some degree of depression or anxiety alongside their physical condition. And here is what struck me every single time. Depression did not just make my patients sad. It kept them from fully engaging in therapy. It slowed recovery. Their mental health illness made re-entry into daily life just feel overwhelming. It felt unsafe to my patients, and it delayed their return to their prior level of function. When their physical function improved, even when we could measure real progress, mental health challenges often stood firmly in the way of getting back to the finish line. It impacted recovery, level of independence, and their quality of life. What stood out most was not that one was harder than the other. It was that mental illness often stripped people of something that medical illness rarely did in quite the same way. And that's agency, or in other words, it's personal control. It's having that control over your life. When mental health is compromised, decision-making suffers, motivation disappears, right? Trust in oneself erodes. Participation in your own care becomes extremely difficult, and the shame and stigma in ways that a broken hip or a stroke never did. That made everything harder. I watched brilliant, capable, accomplished people lose access to themselves, not because of their medical injury, but primarily because of the mental illness they were experiencing. So I made a promise to myself and to Dr. Walker that wherever or whenever I had a platform, I would say this clearly. Preserving your mental health is not a luxury. It is not self-indulgent. It is how you protect your autonomy, your dignity, your right to remain the author of your encore. Let's talk about what is actually happening in your brain, because this is where it gets genuinely interesting, at least from my perspective as having done cognitive therapy. First, the important context. Research consistently shows that depression, anxiety, chronic stress, and social isolation are all associated with accelerated cognitive decline. And here is the bi-directional piece that I think is so critical to understand. Cognitive changes can also increase vulnerability to depression and anxiety. One affects the other, which is exactly why we cannot treat them separately. But here is what I want you to sit up and take notice about. Your brain at any age retains the ability to adapt, reorganize, and form new connections. This is not wishful thinking. This is one of the most well-replicated findings in modern neuroscience. The brain you have today is not fixed. It is not finished. It is, in the most literal biological sense, still growing. This is neuroplasticity. The prefrontal cortex, which manages your decision-making, your emotional regulation, your executive function, responds to intentional engagement. The hippocampus, your memory center, the place where new learning lives, can actually generate new neurons in response to the right inputs. And what are those right inputs? Learning new skills, staying socially connected. We just talked about that in the last episode. Managing stress, moving your body, nurturing your emotional well-being, practicing mindfulness, which I try to bring into every episode, and having purpose, which is pillar number 1. Sound familiar? It should. Because those are exactly the 3 pillars of your Encore. Purpose and intention feed the brain a reason to stay engaged. Community and connection provide the emotional regulation and cognitive stimulation the brain craves. And mental health and cognitive wellness or cognitive function, pillar 3, is where we commit to tending to the whole system with care. So it's not just about upgrading or taking care of your iPhone and upgrading your system with your laptop. It's about keeping us upgraded, right? These 3 pillars were not assembled randomly. They work together because the brain works together. Everything is connected. The transitions that arrive in this chapter of life rarely come at one time. Hormonal shifts, changing identity around work or retirement, family roles evolving, social circles are shrinking or shifting. Each one has on its own is kind of manageable. Together, happening at once, they can quietly strain mental health in ways that creep up before you even notice. And here is the part I think we need to say out loud more. Burnout, anxiety, and depression in women over 55 are not signs that something is actually wrong with you. They are often the entirely logical response to an enormous amount of stimulus change that our culture does not give us nearly enough support to navigate. The brain is a busy place. In many ways, it becomes busier with age, not quieter. Think about it. It holds more memories, more history, more nuance, more awareness. Like any complex operating system, it requires care, updates, and intention to keep running at its best. Meeting the stage with curiosity instead of fear, that is the shift. It's not about denial. It's not being falsely or being forced to be positive. It's not the social media version of aging gracefully. Anyway, let's stay focused. Honest eyes, open, sometimes hard curiosity. What do I need right now? What is working? What is not working? What needs attention? What have I been quietly ignoring? These are the brave questions, and asking them is an act of self-care, self-respect, And really diving into and finding out what the answers is not weakness at all. It's really having the awareness that if there's changes that need to be made, they need to be addressed. So, what do we do with all of this? Here is what I love about the research on brain health. The most effective practices are also the most human ones. They do not require expensive equipment or a neuroscience degree. It means learning something new, taking a class in something you have never tried, having a real conversation, reading something that challenges your thinking, creating something with your hands. It means moving your body, because physical movement increases blood flow to the brain, right? It stimulates the production of the BDNF, which researchers sometimes call miracle grow for your brain. So think about it. We have miracle grow, we can use meditation to fertilize our brain. I mean, we've got a lot of things right there at our fingertips. And all of this has shown in multiple studies to reduce symptoms of depression as effectively as medication has in certain populations. This also means managing stress, which is not the same as eliminating it. Box breathing, intentional pauses, nature, laughter, connection. It means therapy or reflection or both, not because something is broken, but because very high-performing system requires maintenance. The women I admire most are not the ones who never struggle. They are the ones who have the self-awareness to know when they need support and the self-respect to go get it. And it means community, because we are established, because as we established in episode 3, connection is not a luxury. It is literally medicine for the brain. Mental health practices, whether through therapy, reflection, mindfulness, or simply a weekly conversation with someone who truly sees you, these are not add-ons. They are the infrastructure. The Encore Brain Center lives on our website and is your home base for practical research-backed tools to support your cognitive wellness in your Encore years. Every episode, I introduce what we call a brain spark, a short strategy-driven exercise designed to strengthen a specific brain function. Today's spark is called Lock It In, and here is why it belongs in this episode specifically. We just spent time talking about memory, neuroplasticity, and the brain's ability to grow and adapt. Lock It In is a practice that puts those concepts directly into your hands. It is built on one of the most well-established principles in memory research. The brain stores information more effectively when we organize it, when we connect new information to something we already know, when we kind of manipulate it by visualizing it, or we bring it together by commonality, grouping it meaningfully. This is your hippocampus doing exactly what it was designed to do. We are just giving it a little help. Here's how it works. I am going to give you 3 words. As you hear them, I want you to picture them. And the first 3 words, really simple. They are eggs, milk, coffee. So as you're picturing the eggs, you can picture cracking them open. You can picture whipping them up for some scrambled eggs. You can picture putting them in a pot of boiling water. Whatever resonates with you. That's the most important part. It resonates with you. The milk. If you're lactose intolerant, okay, you may not like milk, and that's not going to conjure up the same visual that the person who loves their big glass of milk with their Oreo cookies. So eggs, milk, and the third one is coffee. And I'm not a coffee drinker, never had a cup in my life, but I associate the milk and the coffee together. So we have these 3 words, eggs, milk, and coffee. When you say those words, when you visualize them, what's a word that connects them? What's your anchor word, if you will? Okay? I'm coming up with the word breakfast. How about you? Whatever that word is. So the way the exercise works is that you will be given 3 words, and this moves all the way up to 7 words, and I have done this with my patients successfully. So I've had some of my patients using strategies and being able to recall up to 56 words. Pretty impressive. But the point is that along the way, we're using strategies, we're learning strategies, we're exercising the mind, and the carryover is incredible. I mean, you can just take these skills, and I'll tell you how you can carry them over into your real life and make them more functional, because when things are functional, we're more apt to want to use them, as opposed to standing at our bathroom sink in the morning and pulling out 12 words, right? When we actually employ the act of grouping, connecting, and visualizing, this is how we move something into our short-term memory, but we move it into a little bit of longer storage, if you will. And so you're no longer just listening. You are actually doing what is called encoding. What were those 3 breakfast words? Eggs, milk, and coffee. And the other thing we can do is we can make an association, not only a common word that brings them all together for us, but we can simply say, in really simple, easy sentence, an example. I scramble my eggs and I put milk in my coffee for breakfast. And you can visualize it, you can see it, you could even kind of like taste those eggs, you can get a craving for those eggs suddenly. But the bottom line is that your 3 breakfast words are eggs, milk, and coffee, right? The Encore Brain Center, when you look at this particular spark, it will take you through the steps. Okay, so now we want to do a little bit of carryover. Here is the everyday application I want you to take with you. Okay, so as you are building your community and your connections that we discussed in episode 3, which was pillar number 2 is community and connection, you're meeting new people. And everyone says, I just met so-and-so, but I can't remember her name. And we sit with it, and guess what? We still cannot come up with that individual's name. Our mind is blank, like we never heard it before. But the real news is, it's not that you're not remembering the name, it's that you never really learned it. I mean, you're in passing, like hi, I'm Mary, hi, I'm Jane. You pass, you leave, and you're lucky if you hold on to it. So when you hear a name, I want you to don't let it float past you. Like, I want you to anchor it, okay? You can quickly go through your mind. Does this person remind me of somebody that I already know? Again, there's a connection, right? Does it connect to a visual, a place, an image, a memory? Find the hook, create the association, and then lock it in. For the full lock it in practice, again, you can go to step further. Let's just say you met Mary, and so you make an association and you just rehearse it in your head. And also, while you're still engaging with Mary, you might want to say, so how was your day, Mary? So what are your plans tomorrow, Mary? Try to use it as much as you can. And there are other ways to carry over these skills. And it's when you're going to the supermarket and you're making a list and you're being intentional and you're sitting at home and you're making the list, and you might want to organize that list and put all your produce, purchases you're going to make together, and your deli, and just organize it the way your supermarket is organized. And then you take that list that you compiled of 5 or 10 things, and you put it in your pocket. You go to the grocery store, you go up and down the aisles, and you make or you don't make your purchases at that time, but you put the items into your basket. And then before you go to the checkout, you just kind of pull over for a second with your shopping cart, and you take your list out and your pen, and you go through and you do an inventory of your 10 or 15 items. How many were you able to recall without the list? And this stops you from going home without the item, of course. But you take a few minutes, and darn it, if you get like 15 out of 17 items, it usually feels pretty darn good. And again, you've been intentional, and you've used strategies to help increase that the ability to retain information and then, as importantly, be able to retrieve it. So again, there's great things for you to explore in the Encore Brain Center. Start with the lock it in practice and see where it takes you. I think, like many individuals that I know that have done this and many of my patients, they found it to be helpful. I hope that you visit our Encore Brain Center on our website. The link is in the show notes. Your brain is extraordinary. It just needs the right tools. So let me leave you with this. Mental health and cognitive wellness are not afterthoughts. They are the foundation upon which everything else, your purpose, your connections, your joy, is built. You have spent decades showing up for everyone else, quietly absorbing, managing, adapting, and carrying things that were never yours alone to carry. This is the chapter where you show up for yourself, not out of fear, out of choice, out of deep, earned understanding that you are worth the investment. Your brain is not winding down. It is not past its best days. With the right attention and intention, it is still capable of growth, connection, creativity, and wisdom that genuinely will surprise you. This is your Encore, and it starts right now with a breath and intention and the decision to take your mental health and cognitive function as seriously as other parts of your life. So I ask you to say yes to your brain, say yes to your Encore. Stay curious. Thank you for being here today. I do appreciate spending this time with you. If you heard something that resonates with you, I hope that you will share this episode with a friend. Please join us on social media or on our website at BeyondTheGlassSlipper.com, or if you feel so inclined, please reach out to me personally at BeyondTheGlassSlipper55@gmail.com. I look forward to you joining the conversation and hope to meet you soon.